Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be looking at how those old thought patterns and habits can hold us back from really creating the reality that we want.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be taking all of this wisdom from a single source this time, a talk on overcoming self-sabotage.
Yeah. What really grabbed me about the speaker was how they framed this whole thing as a metaphysical chess game
Wow.
against an entity that's formed by our own negative thoughts and
That's
emotions.
pretty intense.
Yeah, it's high stakes, right?
So how does this old self actually operate?
Okay, so the core concept here is that our thoughts and our emotions, especially the ones that we repeat over and over again,
Hmm.
they generate a powerful frequency. It's like an energy pattern that
Right.
can solidify into an entity.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it's not just thoughts, it's emotions too.
The speaker really emphasizes the power of emotions.
Okay.
It's not just thinking the same thoughts, it's the feeling of those thoughts with
Like,
intensity
okay.
that really amplifies their impact.
So over time, these thoughts that are charged with emotion,
Mm-hmm.
they create what are called thought forms.
Yeah, exactly. And then these thought forms
Yeah.
solidify over time
Okay.
into an entity.
Now, this is where things get a little bit esoteric for me.
Hmm.
The speaker connects these thought forms to concepts like agreeers
Yeah.
from those ancient texts that supposedly feed off negative energy on a much larger level, like societal level.
Hmm. That's a really interesting connection to make. Yeah, it is mind-bending.
Right.
But when you think about it practically, if our own individual thoughts and emotions
Mhm.
can create these energy patterns,
Yeah.
imagine the collective force that's
Yeah.
generated when negativity is shared.
Right.
It's kind of unsettling to think about,
Yeah.
but it's also empowering to realize we might have that much influence,
Definitely.
even if it's unintentional.
It is kind of both unsettling and also empowering at the same time.
Absolutely.
So if this old self does exist,
Yeah.
how do we outsmart it? Or
Well, the speaker lays out 4 main tactics
okay,
that this entity uses to keep us stuck.
right,
The first one is what they call the needy attention hog.
right,
And this is this is really brilliant, I think, because it's basically saying this old self is fighting for its survival.
right.
And its survival depends on you staying stuck in
Okay.
those old patterns.
Oh,
So it's
yeah.
going to try anything
Hmm.
to grab your attention,
Yeah.
especially when you're trying to make those positive changes.
Oh, that's so interesting. So it's like that friend that always wants to like pull you back into the drama
And
or
it's not,
something.
yeah, it's like, come on, let's just stay in the mud.
Right, right, exactly.
Yeah.
And the advice here is to really treat your attention as a valuable resource
Yes.
and not to feed that negativity monster.
Mhm.
It's about consciously choosing to focus your energy on the things that actually uplift you and empower you.
100%. And think about your own life. Have you ever experienced this?
Oh,
Those
yeah.
moments when you're trying to move forward, but something just keeps pulling you back
It's
into
like
those
that.
old negative patterns.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe it's a specific person or situation
Right.
that triggers you,
Right.
gets you going.
And speaking of negativity, that leads perfectly into the second tactic. The speaker describes the old self as almost sadistic,
Oh,
meaning that it thrives on your negative emotions.
yeah, loves it.
And here's where things get really interesting. The speaker suggests that this entity might even try to create circumstances
Oh, yeah.
to make you feel negative.
It's not like a conscious manipulation or anything
yeah,
like that.
right.
It's more like a blind intelligence
Oh,
that operates solely on the energy that you've been feeding it.
I see.
So if you've been feeding it negativity,
Yeah,
that's what it's going to keep trying to recreate.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's not really about blaming this external entity. It's more about recognizing that we're playing a role.
Yeah, we're participating.
Exactly. We're
Yeah.
co-creating
Yeah.
this. Okay, so we've got the attention hog and the negativity addict.
Mm-hmm.
What's the third move in this metaphysical chess game?
Okay, so this one is called reactive and impulsive.
Okay.
And it plays on our tendency to react instinctively
Mhm.
rather than thoughtfully.
Oh, okay.
So think of it like when someone cuts you off in traffic.
Yeah,
Your immediate response is probably anger or frustration,
right,
even if it doesn't solve anything.
right.
It's like our animal brain taking over.
Right, and the speaker actually uses that analogy,
Mm-hmm.
comparing it to an animal's fight or flight response.
Yeah, and that shuts down our higher level thinking.
Right.
And that's exactly what the old self wants.
Oh.
It wants us stuck in that reactive state where
Yeah.
it has more control.
Interesting. So to counter that, the speaker really emphasizes the importance of patience.
Yes,
It's
patience.
about like slowing down those reactions,
Mm-hmm.
creating that space
Yeah.
to actually respond consciously.
They even use the British term,
Okay.
air it, which
Yeah.
I love. It's like acknowledging those negative impulses,
Yeah.
but not engaging with them.
That's great. I like that.
Mhm.
It's like taking a breath before you respond to that email that makes your blood boil.
Exactly.
So we've got the attention hog, the negativity addict, the reactive impulsive.
Hmm.
What is the final move that this old self uses to kind of keep us playing small?
Okay, the final tactic is maybe the most insidious.
Okay.
It's called fear projection.
Oh.
So the idea here is that when we actually start making progress
Yeah.
towards the life that we want, the old self, in its desperation to survive,
Okay.
starts projecting its own fear
What?
onto us.
So it's like you're ready to take that leap of faith, and all of a sudden, all these doubts and anxieties flood your mind.
Exactly. And they feel like they're yours,
Right.
but they're actually coming from this entity, this old self.
So it's not actually you. It's this thing that's separate from you.
That's right.
That's a brilliant point, and I
love-
could see how that could really derail people.
It absolutely can. It's that internalization of the projected fear
Right.
that makes it so tricky, because then we start to believe it's our own.
Mm-hmm.
And then because of that magic M of manifestation that the speaker talks about,
Mm.
that fear that we're now holding becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Wow.
So we actually start to attract situations
Yeah.
that confirm those fears.
It's like we create our own reality, but in this case, the old self is kind of hijacking that creative power.
Exactly. It's twisting it,
Yeah.
turning it against us.
But here's the good news. The speaker emphasizes that simply becoming aware of these tactics is a huge step toward reclaiming our power.
Awareness is key,
Mhm.
100%. Once you can identify these patterns, you can start to separate yourself from them.
Right.
And that's where real transformation can begin.
Wow, that was a lot to unpack.
Right?
But it's incredibly insightful. Let's take a pause here, and then we'll come back and explore how we can practically apply these insights to our own lives. Okay, so we've explored those 4 tactics of the old self: the attention hog, the sadistic negativity seeker, the reactive impulsive, and the fear projector. But knowing is only half the battle. How do we actually use this information? How do we create positive change?
That's the real question, isn't it? Knowledge is only powerful when it's applied. So let's start with the attention hog. Remember, this entity feeds off your reactions. So the first step is to become aware of your triggers. When you feel those familiar feelings creeping in, the anger, the frustration, the self-doubt, maybe it's a critical comment from someone or setback at work, pause before you react.
Like hit that mental pause button.
Exactly. Instead of getting swept away by that initial wave of emotion, you create space for conscious choice.
Oh, I see.
And by not reacting in the usual way, you're essentially cutting off the food supply. You're no longer feeding that negativity cycle. Remember that great term, air it?
Oh, yeah.
Acknowledge those impulses, but don't give them your energy.
It sounds really powerful, but I imagine it takes a lot of practice.
You're absolutely right. It's like building a new mental muscle, that ability to observe those triggers without getting completely hijacked by them.
So mindfulness practices could be really helpful here.
Absolutely. They train your mind to observe your thoughts and emotions without judgment, giving you more freedom to choose how you want to respond.
Okay, so we're being mindful of where our attention is going. And that leads perfectly into the second tactic, that sadistic aspect of the old self. If it thrives on negativity, then consciously choosing positive emotions is like depriving it of oxygen.
That's a great way to put it. The source material really emphasizes that our emotions are incredibly powerful. They literally create our reality. So by cultivating feelings of gratitude, joy, love, even just peaceful acceptance, we're shifting our entire energy frequency.
It's not about forcing ourselves to be happy all the time.
Right. It's more about becoming aware of our emotional state and making conscious choices about how we want to feel.
Okay, so we're being mindful of our attention, we're choosing positive emotions. How does that apply to the third tactic, that reactive and impulsive side?
Remember that tactic preys on our instinctive reactions. So by cultivating patience, by slowing down our responses, we're essentially taking back control. Instead of letting those knee-jerk reactions dictate our behavior, we create space to access our higher wisdom.
It's like we're finally stepping up our game in this metaphysical chess match.
Exactly. We're becoming more strategic players instead of just reacting impulsively. And here's a really practical tip. The next time you feel triggered, try physically slowing down your breath. Take a few deep, conscious breaths before you say or do anything. It sounds simple, but that simple act can really shift you out of that reactive mode and into a more empowered state.
It's like hitting the reset button
Exactly.
before you get sucked into the old drama. Okay, now for that final and perhaps most challenging tactic, the fear projection. How do we stop ourselves from internalizing that projected fear and letting it sabotage our progress?
This one requires real self-awareness. When fear arises, especially when you're trying to move forward in a positive direction, ask yourself, is this truly my fear? Or is this something being projected onto me by my old self, by those old patterns of thinking?
Wow, that's such a powerful question.
It is. It's like shining a light on those shadows and exposing their tactics. And if you sense that the fear isn't truly yours, the speaker suggests this really simple but potent affirmation, that's not me, it's you.
Oh, I like that.
By consciously disidentifying from that projected fear, you break its hold on you.
It's like saying, I see you fear and I'm not falling for your tricks anymore. But what about when the fear feels very real and valid? How do we know if it's healthy caution or the old self's manipulation?
That's where discernment comes in. Healthy fear is grounded in reality and serves a protective purpose. It helps us make wise choices and avoid unnecessary risks. But the fear that stems from the old self is often irrational, limiting, and designed to keep us stuck.
So it's about asking ourselves, is this fear based on evidence and logic?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it coming from those old insecurities and limiting beliefs?
Exactly. And if you're having trouble distinguishing, sometimes it helps to talk it through with someone you trust, a friend, a therapist, a mentor, someone who can offer a fresh perspective.
Oh, that's a great point. Sometimes we're so caught up in our own heads that it's hard to see things clearly. I'm already feeling more empowered just by understanding these tactics. But what else can we do? What are some other practical tips for overcoming this old self and creating the reality we truly desire?
Well, the speaker emphasizes that this is an ongoing process, not a one-time fix. It's about consistently choosing to align with the frequency you want to embody. And that means being mindful of the thoughts you entertain, the emotions you cultivate, and the actions you take.
It's like we're constantly recalibrating our internal compass.
Exactly. Making sure it's pointing toward our truest north. And the speaker offers this really empowering definition of manifestation. Internally shifting to a degree to which you're no longer emotionally dependent upon seeing reality change.
Oh, I love that.
It's not about desperately trying to force things to happen. It's about cultivating a deep inner knowing that you're already aligned with your desired reality.
Mm-hmm.
And when you reach that point of inner alignment, the external world naturally starts to reflect that shift. It's like the speaker said, when you're good with it and you're good without it, that is when anything will ever manifest.
Okay, that's such a powerful place to leave things.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not done yet. When we come back, we'll explore some even deeper questions raised by the source material. If this old frequency is truly an entity, can we communicate with it? Could we potentially re-educate it, help it evolve along with us? It's a mind-bending concept we'll dive into in our final part. All right, welcome back. I'm really intrigued by this next question. If this old frequency that we've been talking about is truly like an entity, can we actually communicate with it? Can we even help it evolve instead of constantly battling it?
It's a fascinating idea, isn't it? Almost like having a conversation with your shadow self.
Yeah.
But if we follow the logic of the source material, it might not be as out there as it seems.
Right, because if this entity is formed by our own energy, it's not really completely separate from us.
Right. It's a reflection of those patterns and beliefs that we've carried for so long.
Yeah. So it's a part of us.
It is a part of us.
So what would that even look like? How do we
Yeah.
communicate with something that feels so intangible?
Well, the source material doesn't really give us a step-by-step guide,
Right.
but it emphasizes the power of awareness.
Yeah.
So maybe the first step is simply acknowledging this old self, recognizing that it's there without judgment.
So instead of labeling it as like bad or trying to like push it away, we create space for it.
Exactly. And we listen to what it's trying to tell us.
Like we're saying, hey, I see you, I hear you, and I understand where you're coming from, but we don't need to operate this way anymore.
Right. There's a new way of being, a new reality that we can create together.
Yeah. And the speaker talks about how our thoughts and emotions are literally the building blocks of this entity.
Mm-hmm.
So if we shift our internal state, if we can cultivate more love, more acceptance, more trust, wouldn't it make sense that that would also affect the old self?
It makes perfect sense. It's like we're upgrading its operating system,
Yeah.
giving it new information to work with.
And so we're transforming it from the inside out.
Exactly. It's an ongoing process, a dance between awareness, compassion, and conscious choice.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one key takeaway you hope listeners will walk away with?
I think it's this. You have more power than you realize to shape not only your external reality, but also your inner world.
Hmm.
And that includes this old self, this collection of patterns and beliefs that might be holding you back. Instead of seeing it as the enemy, what if you viewed it as a part of yourself that simply needs healing and guidance?
That's a really powerful message to end on. And it reinforces the idea that transformation isn't about, like, battling some external force. It's about cultivating a deeper understanding of ourselves and embracing all parts of who we are.
Beautifully said. Remember, you are not your past. You are the conscious creator of your present and your future.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. It's been an incredible exploration. We'd love to hear your thoughts and insights, so feel free to share them. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.